Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a Ukraine war breaking news update, another one for this afternoon, 2nd of July 2025. I have actually talked about this earlier in the day in a live stream I did with Jonathan Fink, but it requires its own video because I want to go into further detail about this. This is huge, right? So, if it's true, it's coming from Ukrainian intelligence. It's not yet being confirmed by South Korean intelligence. But it's not being disconfirmed. It's just out there at the moment. And the claim is that as many as 30,000 North Korean troops could bolster Russia's armed forces imminently. And that is a massive challenge. I've said before that the North Korean troops that have already been put against the Ukrainians in the Kursk region have been a real thorn in the side of the Ukrainians. In fact, they helped to dislodge the Ukrainians from the Kursk region. These North Koreans are troops that are learning. They are humans given weapons. They have mechanized equipment. They are people that end up charging at the Ukrainians with gun in hand. That if they aren't killed, then they will kill the Ukrainians. I mean, it sounds obvious, but it requires attrition, unfortunately, to get rid of them. It's not like 100% of the North Korean troops are going to be killed by the Ukrainians and the Ukrainians will suffer zero casualties as a result of the North Koreans. Like, they have to overcome, and it's been said that some 14,000 troops have been pitted against the Ukrainians, North Korean troops already. That is a challenge for the Ukrainians. They should not be dismissed. They have learnt, adapted, and become better fighters by all accounts. And that there might well be another 25 to 30,000 troops thrown at the Ukrainians is a huge challenge. And it also suggests that that pot is somewhat endless, as in, functionally, that actually it could well be the North Koreans don't really value the lives of their citizens that much. They are a draw on, food and whatnot in North Korea. So, draft a bunch of these into Russia, get them looked after by the Russians, get some kind of money or military tech or hardware or whatever, you get some kind of payment in exchange for these people. And to be fair, the North Koreans are going to be fairly desperate for all manner of things, but actually they're in a pretty good bargaining position for these people, considering Russia's desperate. But they get 30-odd thousand troops. That is such a good resource for the Russians compared to what the Ukrainians get. They strive really hard, the Ukrainians, to get as much equipment as possible, but what they really, really need are boots on the ground. They need vast numbers of infantrymen, of troops, and that's exactly what they don't have, and that's what the Russians do have, and they have access to even more. Okay, this is a fascinating CNN article. It's a good deep dive here, this one. Good report. It says, although it's bad news, North Korea is set to triple the number of its troops fighting for Russia along the front lines with Ukraine, sending an additional 25 to 30,000 soldiers to assist Moscow, according to the intelligence assessment from the Ukrainian officials. The troops may arrive in Russia in the coming months, according to the assessment seen by CNN, adding to the 11,000 sent in November, who helped repel Ukraine's incursion into Russia's Kursk region. Around 4,000 of those North Korean soldiers were killed or injured in the deployment, according to Western officials, yet Pyongyang's cooperation with Moscow has since bloomed. And that 11,000 was the initial number sent. There are reports that another 4,000 went thereafter. A Western intelligence official confirmed the estimates, saying they had seen information separate. So a Western intelligence official, unnamed, has seen a separate assessment to the Ukrainian one, which suggested up to 30,000 new North Korean troops could be sent to Russia. Ukrainian assessment seen by CNN says the Russian Ministry of Defense is capable of providing, quote, needed equipment, weapons and ammunition with the aim of further integration of Russian combat units. The document adds there is a great possibility the North Korean troops will be engaged in combat in parts of Russian-occupied Ukraine to strengthen the Russian contingent, including during the large-scale offensive operations. Now, that is where it gets even more controversial. So not only is it bad that on geographical European soil, North Koreans are fighting. North Koreans are being drafted in to fight in Europe against Ukraine. You can just about let the Russians get away with that since they've been applied to Kursk, the Russian region that was attacked by Ukraine. But if the North Koreans are going to be used in occupied Ukraine in areas that the Russians have taken, then that's even more controversial. And one would hope that the Europeans and the Americans would have something to say about that. But I'm not sure that the Americans give one iota, one hoot about what is going on these days in Ukraine. And Europe seems to be reluctant to stand up strong against Russia without the US standing behind them. So it's really, really frustrating. So here we have, the Ukrainian assessment seen by CNN says the Russian MOD is capable of providing needed equipment, weapons and ammunition, as we heard, with the aim of further integration to Russian combat units. The document adds there is a great possibility the North Korean troops will be engaged in combat in parts of Russian-occupied Ukraine to strengthen the Russian contingent, including during the large-scale offensive operations. That is such a problem. The assessment from Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Agency also says there are signs that Russian military aircraft are being refitted to carry personnel, reflecting the vast undertaking of moving tens of thousands of foreign troops across Russian Siberia, which shares a border with North Korea in its far southwest. Now, possible preparations for the new deployment, including the arrival of a ship linked to last year's deployments at a Russian port and cargo aircraft at North Korea's Sunan airport, had been spotted on satellite imagery obtained by CNN. And North Korea initially sent 11,000 troops to Russia in the autumn of 2024 in great secrecy, with Russian President Putin only confirming the deployment in late April. In October, North Korean soldiers were pictured being handed equipment for the front lines at the Sergeyevka military base in Primorsky Krai. A month later, a Rapucha-class Russian ship docked at the Dunai port in Nakodka, 95 kilometers to the southwest, and which could carry up to 400 troops, analysts said. The same type of troop transporting Rapucha ship again docked on May the 18th at the same Dunai port, according to satellite images supplied by CNN by the Open Source Centre, a UK-based non-profit specialising in open source intelligence related to defence and security. Flight patterns also suggest the movement of some troops could also be underway. The Open Source Centre supplied CNN with satellite imagery from the Sunan airport in North Korea on June the 4th, in which cargo planes, possibly IL-76s, were taxiing on the tarmac with the same type of aircraft used in last year's deployment. While imagery does not show what the ship and the planes are being used for, the movements could suggest a pattern consistent with what analysts observed last year. Quote, satellite imagery shows a Russian personnel carrier arriving at Dunai in May and activity in Sunan airport in May and June, says Joe Byrne, senior analyst at the Open Source Centre. Quote, this appears to indicate that the routes previously used to move North Korean troops are active and could be used in any large-scale future transfer of personnel. Jenny Town, a senior fellow and director of the Korean program at Stimson Center, said the Ukrainian assessment of 30,000 sounded, quote, high, but they can certainly come up with that number. They won't be elite soldiers. Kim Jong-un has said he is all in, so it depends on what Russia has asked for. Town said 10 to 20,000 sounds more realistic, and that North Korea might slowly deploy the troops in stages. Quote, there have been rumours that Russian generals have been inside North Korea training troops there already, she said. Ukraine's Defence Minister Rustem Umerov said Thursday that Kyiv suspected further North Korean troops might be deployed, but added that the country's leader, Kim Jong-un, risked putting his own government in peril by exposing so many elite troops to the high casualty rates on the front line. Russia's use of elite North Korean troops demonstrates not only a growing reliance on total regimes, but also serious problems with its mobilization reserve, Umerov said. Together with our partners, we are monitoring these threats and will respond accordingly. And so there's been other evidence to suggest that actually there's been this large-scale integration of the North Koreans with the Russians. Looking around this, you can see that that there's been training taking place together. Close combat training. Ukrainian intelligence has also supplied the most complete record of the 82 strikes by North Korean KN-23 and KN-24 ballistic missiles. So we know they've been using ballistic missiles. We've seen the Koksan 1989, M1989, the M1990, like self-propelled howitzers and multiple launch rocket systems have been caught on camera being used. There is this close integration. CNN's also obtained from an official in Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Directorate training manuals for North Korean artillery translated into Russian. That's another sign that they are working very closely. An increasing numbers of videos of North Korean artillery on the front line as mentioned. Now, as I've said, the NIH, the NIS, sorry, the South Korean intelligence services have, well, it's unclear whether they agree with this, that there are 30,000 North Koreans on the way to Russia to help in the war against Ukraine, but they certainly haven't come out and said that that's not true. I find this incredibly disturbing. 30,000 North Korean troops could be on the way to Russia. This is becoming more obviously the world war I've always said it was, and the allies of Russia are dancing to the tune of the Kremlin. Really disturbing, really, really bad news for Ukraine. Let me know what you think, of course. But yeah, certainly not the best of news today. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much.